All right, and I'll let you guys take it away.
Great. Well, thank you, Carmel and Hiba. Thank you for your collaboration to make this possible. And also thanks everybody out there, all the future grad students who have joined us for this session, which is all about how to create a competitive graduate school application. So my name is Julie Schertz, and I am an associate director in the Global Higher Education Division at ETS. I'll be assisting with the webinar today by monitoring the chat, and I'm about to introduce our brilliant, accomplished presenters. I do want to just encourage you to feel free to ask questions. You can do that as we go through the presentation, or you can wait until the end. We will break for Q&A at the end of the session, so that will be a great time to ask any questions you have about applying to grad school. I do want to encourage you to stay until the end if possible, not only to be there for the Q&A, but we'll also be providing a special promotion for everybody as a way to thank you for attending. So let's try to remember to keep down the background noise since this is being recorded. And without further ado, I'm really happy to introduce our speakers today. So we have with us Drs. Maureen Grasso and Dr. Carlos Grijalva. So Dr. Maureen Grasso is an ASHRAE Fellow and a Professor Emerita of Textile Science and former Dean of the Graduate School at North Carolina State University. She was also the Graduate Dean at the University of Georgia, and she has received numerous awards and recognition for her work, including the Southern Graduate School's Achievement Award for Outstanding Contributions to Graduate Education. She also served on the Board of Directors of the Council of Graduate Schools and in key leadership positions for the Conference of Southern Graduate Schools, including the position of president. She also served on the National Academy of Sciences Committee on revitalizing graduate STEM education for the 21st century. And then we also have Dr. Carlos Grijalva, a Professor Emeritus of Psychology and Neuroscience and former Associate Dean of the Graduate Division at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. In his role as Associate Dean, Dr. Grijalva was responsible for graduate diversity programs and oversaw the Graduate Division Offices of Diversity, Inclusion, and Admissions and Fellowships and Financial Services. He also served in a variety of administrative positions, including Associate Dean in the Division of Honors and Undergraduate Programs in the College of Letters and Sciences, and the interim chair of the Chavez Center for Interdisciplinary Instruction in Chicana and Chicano Studies. We are thrilled to have Dr. Grijalva and Dr. Grasso as graduate education advisors at ETS. And now I'm going to pass the floor to them. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. We're so pleased that you joined us today. And so you can see the agenda on the left side. We're going to talk about the application admission process and give you some insider information from the perspective of what faculty are thinking about. We'll talk about elements of a strong application, the interview, and definitely financial considerations. And then finally, at the end, talk about closing the deal. The bottom line of putting your application together, what you're trying to do is convince the admissions committee, that's the faculty, that will be looking at your portfolio of information. You want to convince them that you have the skills and the drive to be successful and contribute to the success of their program. So let's move on and talk about the application admission process. There are three things that are very important that you should know about the application process. First, that many times the application has two major components, and you may need to submit both of them or upload them to one location. For example, the graduate school is interested in collecting information such as your transcript, so they can verify that you've earned whatever the latest degree that you are indicating that you have earned. They also may want to collect test scores. They also may want to collect some other information as well as an application fee to process everything. The department may be interested in information like your resume. They may want a writing sample or know about some of your work experience. The key thing to remember about the point number one is that you want to look at the graduate school to see whether you submit everything there. Most likely today, that's how it's done, and what parts are important to to complete for the department. So you're going to have to look at the department as well as the graduate school. Step number 2, the most important thing about the application process is you're not going to be considered. Your application is not going to be reviewed until every section is fully completed and every piece of information that's being required is in the system, so that the graduate school can then forward that to the department for review. For example, you've applied for your transcripts to be sent. Until that transcript gets there, your application will sit in what we call a holding file. Or maybe you were asked to submit 3 letters of recommendation and only 2 have come in. Well, it's going to sit there and it's going to sit there. So it's real important for you to be familiar with the graduate school's portfolio, the portal, so that you can go in and check and see, oh, my transcript hasn't arrived yet, and reach out back to the institution where you earned your most recent degree to have that information sent, or to kindly send a nice reminder to the faculty member that hasn't submitted that letter of recommendation. So very important. You got to get it all in, it's got to be complete, and then the review will begin. And then thirdly, attention to detail is so, so important. Okay, so let's talk about, on the next slide, we'll see that admission to graduate school is competitive. Well, you know that. Basically, programs have a limited number of spaces, and many times the application pool can be very large. And so they may have, for example, 130 applications for 10 slots. They only have availability of being able to take in 10 students, whether it's for funding or because of space in the lab. So get to know your prospective faculty members by going on the website and reaching out to them. Faculty will need to be selective in identifying those students to fill those special places. And it does make a difference if you've made prior contact with faculty at the institution, because they can then speak up for you. Oh, I remember this student. Yeah, we corresponded by email. They'll look a little closer at your application, and so that can really help. In addition, keep in mind that as they're making the decision, you may be the perfect fit and the perfect graduate student, but if they don't have funding, if the grant money hasn't come in, or if there isn't money from the state to help support assistantships, resources are limited. And so it may be that they just don't have enough money to admit all the students that they want to admit. So let's look at what faculty members consider in the graduate admissions process. Here's a whole list of items from your transcript, your academic background. They're going to look at that. They're going to look at your GPA, and if you've taken the GRE scores. They're going to look at the institution from which you just graduated. They're going to look at who wrote those letters of recommendation and what the letters say or don't say. They're going to look at your area of research interest. Have you thought about the research? And this is if you're going on for a PhD. In some other areas where it's maybe a master's only, you may not be doing research. You may not be doing a thesis, but they want to see that what you're interested in is going to match what the program can offer. There's something we'll talk a little bit later, a statement of purpose and a personal statement. And we'll talk more about that. They're going to look at that. And then also whatever work experience you've had, internships, research. And then if you're an international student, they're going to look English assessment scores. So they're going to look at all of this, all these pieces of information. So let's move on and look at things to know about the departmental process. So in the next slide. So you may be interested in applying, I'm just going to make this up, to biology department at University A, University B, and University C. What I want to tell you is that admissions process vary from one department to another. So you really need to become familiar with the specific details and requirements of each department to which you are applying. There are going to be some general things that they're all going to want to see, but there'll be some fine tuning of additional information that they want. So you really need to look at very carefully, what's the graduate school wanting from all these institutions that I'm thinking about applying to? What is the department looking for? Then you need to think about the external influences. So as I mentioned, admission depends on many factors. For example, about funding. They are also thinking about the details and looking at your application and how the program goals match with what you're looking for, because they want the applicant to be a good fit in terms of your academic goals and what you're trying to achieve. And then finally, some departments, you should be aware that they will assign an applicant directly to a faculty members who will take extra care to mentor that student and look over that application. They'll all read the applications, but faculty members that you've reached out to are more likely to speak up for you if they're familiar with you and your work. And then faculty want you as a graduate student many times to assist them in their research efforts. So that's why if you're going to be doing a thesis for a master's level or PhD, they want to make sure that research is going to match. If you're working in another area like social work or an MBA, there's not going to be a research component perhaps, or maybe case studies and other projects. But again, you want to reach out to faculty so they can be familiar with who you are. So in the next slide, we talk about presenting yourself as a whole package. And so you keep in mind that you want to tell a consistent narrative about who you are. So faculty are going to be reading all these pieces of information. They're going to be looking at the letters of recommendation. They're looking at the test scores, your grades from your institution. And they want to put it all together. And they want to make sure everything is consistent. So your application really wants to showcase your talents and your special characteristics. Talk about your accomplishments, your interpersonal skills, and what sets you apart from others. So, Carlos, you're up.
All right, so we're going to talk about the elements of a strong application. What do faculty and admissions committees look at? And here is a chart that really kind of gives you the whole array. So if you look down at the column that's labeled evidence, these are the pieces of information that you're most likely to submit for your application: the undergraduate transcripts and your GPAs, the GRE scores if you've taken standardized tests. As Maureen had mentioned, the personal statement, statement of purpose, letters of recommendation, a resume that outlines things that you have accomplished, or research experience and interviews. So we have these components, these major components that are part of the application. And then across the rows, we have the different skills and talents that they map onto. So we have cognitive skills, academic background, personal attributes, work experience, interests, and passions. And then finally, fit to the program goals and mission, which of course all of them would map onto at some point. So if we're taking a look at cognitive skills and academic background, the two areas that faculty would be most interested in looking into very closely would be the undergraduate transcripts and your GPA. If you've taken the GRE test, then the cognitive skills will be tapping into quantitative reasoning, verbal reasoning, analytic writing. And then if you've taken a subject test, something that is more directly related to the field that you want to go into. The personal statement and statement of purpose is more important in trying to glean some of your personal attributes, as Maureen had said, things that are tied into your passion, your motivation, challenges that you may have had along the way. In terms of the statement of purpose, you want to outline why it is that you want to enter that particular field and what experience you might have related to it. So work experience would be part of it. And both the personal statement and statement of purpose are really going to be tapping into your interests, why you want to get into the program, what your passions are. And these are going to be important because the letters of recommendation should complement or corroborate the information that you are providing. So hopefully when you're thinking about who's going to write a letter of recommendation for you, you should be thinking about individuals that understand and know what you would like to accomplish down the road and what talents you have that would help you to achieve those goals. The resume and research experience, again, are going to give some information about your work experience and also your interests and passions. And then finally, it's rounded out by the interviews that you may or may not participate in, either live or virtually. And here again, a lot of interviews are going to be focusing on your personal attributes, the kind of person that you are, maybe your work ethics, your work experience, your passions, and your interests. They may talk about some of the other things like your academic background, but really it's more a matter of trying to get to know you better and understanding how well you actually fit into the program. So they're going to try to get a sense of you as a well-rounded person. They want to kind of understand what your brand is, if you want to use that term. What makes you you, and why should you be considered over somebody else in their particular program? So Maureen had mentioned presenting yourself as the whole package, and it begins typically with the transcripts, because these are typically the first things that faculty tend to look at. So you want to make sure that you get them in early. You want to follow up to make sure the transcripts have arrived. And in the transcripts is going to give the reviewer a sense of not only the courses you've taken, but it reflects your program of study. How does it relate to the program that you're applying to? In other words, does it really map onto the program in terms of their particular goals and what they might have to offer in terms of research and mentorship? And so the match is really quite critical in terms of how well you have investigated the program, the department, the faculty that are in that program, and how well your talents match the interests and the research of the individuals in that particular program. The transcripts are going to give some sense of the depth, that is the progression of courses that you've taken from introductory or foundational to more advanced courses. And they're also going to demonstrate breadth, that is the identification of courses you've taken in related fields or in general education. So again, part of it is not only being kind of specialized for the research and the types of things that you want to do in your career, but also what you have brought in terms of your knowledge base that would actually help you to be more creative in terms of your particular goals and your particular research interests. So in most cases, a strong application is going to demonstrate certain desirable attributes, your personal attributes that talk about things like your ability to work well with other people, the leadership skills that you bring to the program, how well engaged you are or committed you are, not only to the field, but also to the mission of that department. And these personal attributes are going to be assessed not only through your coursework and your academic work, but they're also going to be assessed by things you do outside of the classroom. So we talk about co-curricular activities and we talk about extracurricular activities. And here we're really looking for what makes you special in addition to being academically eligible for the program. So the co-curricular activities are typically things like undergraduate or additional research that you're doing outside of the classroom. It may be an honors project. It may be a summer research program. And it's important to get this experience because it's going to start the process of developing your interest in that field and identifying what your passion is. And part of that, again, is going to be gleaned from your transcript, the fact that you're concentrating on a certain major or you have certain minors that you're pursuing. These are going to tell us something about your interest and your passion. But getting involved in the process of actually generating research or new data is going to give you the opportunity to develop your analytic and critical thinking skills as well as your writing skills. Ideally, you may have the opportunity to present some of your data not only to your group, but maybe to a conference, for example. It's going to give you the opportunity to develop the ability to organize and present your data and your information. And again, it's going to be key in terms of gaining relevant information related to the degree or the career objectives if you have that you have had. This is assuming that you have the ability and the time to engage in something outside of the classroom. And we do realize that oftentimes some students have to work and don't quite have the amount of time that others do to engage in research in the same kind of way. So when you're thinking about writing your personal statement, a statement of purpose, if you've not had a lot of opportunity to get involved in research, think about other experiences, maybe work experiences where you might have had to use critical thinking or creative talents to do the kind of work that you do. What you want to demonstrate is this notion of persistence, of cooperation, possibly of leadership, resiliency. All these things are part of what are the personal attributes that one is looking for in the application. We also have the extracurricular activities, and these are the things that are not necessarily directed at the research interests that you might have, but it's your involvement in things within the community or maybe sports and athletics. Part of it is demonstrating that you can work by yourself, but you can also work as a team. You might be involved in certain professional activities, maybe student organizations or even professional societies. I know within psychology, there's a very active psychological group called Psychi that some students join that get them involved in doing various things related to the field of psychology. You may get involved in community activities or tutoring. Those in the biomedical sciences often look for opportunities in hospitals and clinics and dental clinics to shadow those in the field and to maybe provide some help along the way. You may be involved in your particular faith-based activities within your communities, whether it's synagogue or churches or whatever the case might be. You might also be involved in things that have to do with increasing diversity and inclusion of groups within your particular environment, maybe on campus, maybe outside of campus. So part of it is demonstrating that you are a well-rounded individual, that you have a sense of citizenship, possibly that you have certain levels of empathy and compassion and want to help other people, and possibly that you have a civic responsibility that you want to try to meet along the way. So these are kind of going to highlight individual things that tie into your leadership and your ability to work with individuals, but also teamwork, and that's also going to be quite key. So why is it important to demonstrate leadership and engagement? And these are just some of the things that faculty look for that are key to being successful in graduate school. For one thing, it demonstrates maturity, the fact that you're able to take responsibility for yourself, that you're able to engage in a way that's professional. It is going to be important that you demonstrate some level of persistence and the ability to overcome obstacles. We know that grad school is sometimes very challenging, and I know in my own experience, working on certain projects, some projects work beautifully and some projects were utter failures, and you don't want to let that get you down. You want to kind of pick yourself up by the bootstraps and keep going and find other ways or other angles on tackling the problem that you're faced with. Patience is key. Patience is not only important in your own particular life, but patience is also very important in your academic and research settings. Students in graduate school have um, opportunities to demonstrate the ability to overcome obstacles, but patience is key because what you're doing in graduate school is maybe you are delaying gratification by making short-term sacrifices for long-term gains, right? So you're not getting paid. Maybe you could be out making more money than you're making as a grad student, or you maybe not making any money at all as a grad student. But you have plans and goals that are going to help you to be in a better situation down the road by being patient and working hard and trying to do what you need to do. It also gives you a way to demonstrate your time management skills and your ability to prioritize. These are going to be very important also to be successful in grad school. And as we mentioned at the bottom here, it's best to do some things well for a sustained period of time rather than dabble on many things. And I know that as an undergraduate, oftentimes you're tempted to do as many things to kind of pad the resume. But when you're focused on graduate school applications, you really want to show the sustained level of work and patience and persistence and so on and so forth. I know that many programs have either made the GRE test optional or dropped it. So you want to find out if the department or program requires the GRE test or the subject test. And if they don't require it, you might want to consider taking the general test anyway, because this might boost your application. You don't want to provide less information than other applicants, and it may be that the scores can now balance out weaker parts of your application. The key here is to familiarize yourself with the test, which again measures verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, critical thinking, and analytic writing skills. You want to take it seriously. You want to do what students do when they want to go to medical school and they're studying for the MCATs. I've had students in my lab that have taken a gap year and decided to help out in research, but they are really there to take the time to study for the MCATs. They may take prep courses, one thing or the other. So they're really focused on getting in. And I think you have to have that same kind of level of seriousness if you're going to take the GRE test. If you're an individual who does not have a lot of opportunities to gain research experience, and maybe you haven't had a lot of contact with faculty that can write you a strong letter of recommendation, or maybe in some cases you feel that you're being that you're in a program that is not as competitive as offered in other institutions or universities. Here is where a good GRE score might actually provide a tipping point in your application if other things are not quite so strong. So think about it if you haven't taken it, and also explore the resources that ETS provides in terms of free or low cost test preparation materials and so on and so forth. So just a reminder here that this is something that you may want to be thinking about if you haven't already. So another important component that we want to emphasize are the letters of recommendation, because these are going to tap into the personal attributes that you have highlighted in your own application. And you want to make sure that you can go to faculty members primarily, and when you ask for a letter of recommendation, ask them if they have the time to write you a strong letter of recommendation. And you can be pretty bold here, because you don't want to be asking for letters that are just going to say so-and-so was at my class and was a good student and be done with it. So you want to ask them to be fairly specific in terms of whether or not they feel as though they can write you the strong letter recommendation. And what you want to do is you want to help them out as best you can. So you want to provide them with information, a copy of your personal statement, maybe a copy of the resume. I often ask students to give me a copy of their transcript. And sometimes they may be a little bit reluctant to do that because maybe they've had a class or two that they didn't do very well in. But that gives me the opportunity to ask them about what's going on. And maybe it was a period where they had certain challenges in their life that they were dealing with, and or maybe they just didn't like the course that well and didn't really spend the time and commitment to do as well as they could have because they were devoting that time to something else. So the more information you give them, the better, because then they can actually round out other things that are outside of the class that you might have taken with them. Give them plenty of time, at least 2 weeks, I would say even more, because oftentimes if you're asking that faculty member for a letter of recommendation, other students are also asking for letters of recommendation. And this is really true in terms of when you're asking for that letter. If it's coming up to a deadline for applications, then faculty are going to be inundated with requests as opposed to kind of planning it out over time and getting to know the faculty. You want to get letters from faculty in your major area. So you want to get to know the faculty, You might want to spend some time visiting office hours. You want to start the process early. You don't want to wait till the very last minute. So if you're in a class, go to office hours. If you've taken the class, visit them occasionally just to say hello. Maybe you're shy. Maybe you don't know what to say when you go to a faculty member's office hour. Well, you may have nothing to say, ask about the class, but ask them about the research. Faculty love to talk about the research. So start that relationship early on. And then once they do agree to write a letter recommendation for you, send them reminders and also a thank you. That's really very important. So who should you ask to write a letter recommendation for you? Is a letter from a professor whose class you took and you received an A necessarily the best choice? Is a letter from a distinguished professor necessarily the best choice? What if you've been out of school for a while? The key here is that you want to get letters of recommendation primarily from faculty members who have gotten to know you uh, within the class or within a research setting, and that can actually reflect on these personal attributes that you are going to be illuminating in your personal statement and statement of purpose. That is really key, more so than the rank of the professor, and more so than if you even got an A. If you worked really hard and you got something less than an A, that doesn't necessarily mean that's not a good person to get a letter from. In fact, I wrote a letter for a student who got a C in my class. And she was, this is a psychobiology class, pretty complicated material that we were covering. And she had a lot of personal challenges. She was an underrepresented minority, had commitments at home, was working during, the day. But she was trying really hard and was trying to make every office hour she possibly could just to keep up with the material. And so at the end of the quarter, I went up to her and she got a C in the class. I said, if you need a letter of recommendation or if you're thinking of applying to graduate school, come and see me because I'd be happy to write a strong letter for you. Because she impressed me with her persistence and her commitment and the fact that she was doing the best she could under some very uh, challenging situations in her life. We talked about the personal statement and statement of purpose. Maureen's going to talk about the statement of purpose, which is really kind of focused on why it is that you want to pursue that particular field. But I'm going to focus on the statement of the personal statement. And the personal statement provides additional information that aids the selection committee in evaluating your preparation and aptitude for graduate school. So in the personal statement, you are probably going to be focused on describing how your unique character and experiences have enabled you to contribute positively and effectively, not only to the department, but also to the academic field. At least that's what you should be thinking about reflecting on in the personal statement. In that statement, this is the opportunity also to explain challenges or barriers that you may have faced in pursuing higher education and how you overcame those barriers. Our good colleague Terry Ackerman is quoted here saying that the personal statement is just that. It's personal, so it should be specific to you, your goals, your experiences, your personal attributes. So the purpose of the personal statement is to give you the opportunity to showcase your passions, your personality, and your potential. The benefits here for the reviewer is that it puts a face to more objective quantitative criteria. So rather than looking at the numbers and what those numbers might say about your ability or aptitude for graduate programs, it really gives a more objective view of you because after all, you have unique experiences, you have unique backgrounds, and unique points of view that are often very important to know about in the process of deciding who's going to get into graduate school and who's not. Departments may provide prompts that direct you to what it is that they want to know about you. And so make sure that you're reading the application instructions Carefully if they have prompts and they're trying to kind of help you, guide you through the process of what it is they want to know about you. Pay attention to those prompts. Here's some example at UCLA. I think UCLA in the personal statement has 4 prompts, and I just highlighted 2 here. One of them are the educational, personal, cultural, economic, or social experiences not described in your statement of purpose that have shaped your academic journey. If so, how? Have any of these experiences provided unique perspectives that you would contribute to your program, field, or profession? Another prompt: describe challenges or barriers that you have faced in your pursuit of higher education. What motivated you to persist, and how did you overcome them? What is the evidence of your persistence, progress, and success? Finally, there may be opportunities for you to discuss what we call the diversity imperative. All departments and programs are now more serious about diversity. They're interested in diversity of thought and experience, which leads to greater creativity, productivity, and innovation, but it also promotes social justice and equity. So be able to articulate in some way what is meant by this diversity imperative. They may ask you to highlight certain things that are tied to diversity, for example, in the personal statement. You might want to identify ways in which you engage in service efforts or programs to increase the participation of groups historically underrepresented in higher education. Show that you understand the broad continuum of this diversity imperative, which includes the overrepresentation of members of some groups in higher education, as well as the underrepresentation of other groups, for example, women or students of color or students with disabilities. If you yourself were disadvantaged in some way, you may want to highlight experiences that show that you have the drive and motivation to persist and succeed in spite of these barriers. And then finally, you may want to, you may have opportunities to bring research from non-traditional educational backgrounds to understand the experiences of others from groups of underrepresented that are underrepresented in higher education. And what comes to mind in this particular vein is the fact that there is a whole direction of health disparities among minority populations, and how one might actually bring that perspective into view to help understand the dynamics of these health disparities. All right. Maureen?
Right. So Carlos has just talked about the personal statement, and I'm gonna, as he mentioned, talk about the statement of purpose. Keep in mind, not all institutions will ask for both. So you want to make sure, many of them will just ask for a personal statement. Some don't really give a lot of direction. So it's okay to follow up with the graduate coordinator and see if you can get some more information from them if they have prompts. Now, the statement of purpose really helps the admissions committee to understand your academic interests and evaluate how your academic interests fit and align with the proposed program of study that the program can offer. So in writing your statement of purpose, their faculty want to know, why have you chosen this field? What sort of relevant academic research or work or professional experience makes you a strong candidate? And so you're going to want to include that information, and you want to include information that demonstrates your subject matter knowledge or general skills that you've acquired to fit with the program. So on the next slide, we talk about a little bit more about it's important to follow the graduate school or program guidelines carefully. I cannot stress that enough, because each program is unique, even though maybe all biology programs that you're applying to. So you really, their area of interest and research and focus is going to be slightly different. So you want to follow the guidelines, the graduate school or program guidelines carefully. You want to write that statement specifically for that program that you're applying to. And then when you're working on another program or another application, write it specifically for that. I always encourage my students to write it rewrite it and rewrite it. It's real important to, as you're writing, this is something that I learned along the way from a good editor. And once you've drafted it and rewritten it, let it sit. Let it sit for a day. Your mind will process that statement that you've just drafted. While you may not be consciously thinking about it, your mind is working on it. And when you come back to it, what you'll find is that as you read it, you will have some new insight, and then you can edit it and perhaps think about a different perspective to enhance that statement of purpose. I encourage my students to take it to the writing center or let a faculty member critique it. The other thing I encourage my students to do is, okay, you've rewritten it several times, you've let it set, you've rewritten it again, stop. Read it out loud. When you read it out loud, you will find that you might stumble over an area, oh, that doesn't make sense, or that's a little awkward. You can go back and edit that. That was a technique I learned from a really good editor. You want to accent the positive, and when there are challenges or negative items that you just want to briefly touch on them. And really, we don't want to dwell on that, but what did you learn from that challenge or that experience? And so the faculty are going to want to know, who are you and why graduate school? This is your opportunity to stand out among many similarly qualified candidates. It is your voice to the admissions committee. So please follow the directions very carefully. In fact, what I like to do is give my directions. If I'm doing this to someone, please read the directions. Now read what I wrote. Did I follow those directions carefully? Another pair of eyes always helps. So let's move on to the next slide and look at the statement of purpose. And really what you're trying to do here is demonstrate your familiarity with the graduate program and the university. Again, from all the writing that you've done, you want to be consistent and coherent in your presentation of ideas. You want to have a strong beginning, it's got to have a middle and an end. It's got to flow. And we talked about, challenges that you may have experienced, and you want to explain those in a very positive way. For example, Carlos has mentioned maybe you've had to work and you haven't had the opportunity to do a lot of research. You've had to take time off from school. So you can talk about those experiences. So keep in mind that as the faculty are reading these things, the expectations will vary by field, department, and faculty reviewer. And that's why your attention to the detail and what they're looking for is really important. They're also expecting to see a higher level of writing, more sophistication than perhaps the essays that you wrote your freshman year or even last year. So keep in mind that that's real important. And that's why it's important to have someone else look over your work. All right, so I have an example here. And in this example, it shows that the person writing is familiar with a particular university, where they write that they're interested in the program because many of the faculty members at the institution are conducting research in the areas of their interests, their methodological or theoretical and geographical interests. For example, Dr. A has conducted research with coastal populations of the Pacific, including the Chumash. Now, one thing I want to warn you about, faculty move. They move up, sometimes they move into administration and are no longer in the department. A lot happens over the summer. They may move to another institution. So you want to always make sure that if you're writing about Professor A, then you want to make sure Professor A is still in the program. You want to avoid simplicity and generalization in your statement. Faculty are looking for someone that's looking more than, oh, I just want to go to grad school because I can't figure out what I want to do next, or I really love my major. That's not going to cut it. They're really looking for what is it that you want to pursue and why, and where do you see yourself going with this? So try to avoid simple statements like, I love to learn new things, or because I want to make a difference. They know you want to make a difference, and they know that you want to learn new things, but you need to give them a little more information than that. So what you're trying to do on the next slide talks about demonstrating your depth of experience about what you hope to pursue and why. And there are some examples there, but I'm going to focus on the bottom example. In this example, it says, I knew college was definitely going to be a challenging experience. Fortunately, the support I received from my family empowered me to pursue my goals. I decided to trust in my talents and embark on the journey of college. Although I've had my ups and my downs, my determination and desire to succeed have helped me persevere. Okay, when I'm reading this, I'm going, wow, this student has confidence in what they can do. They have faced challenges. It sounds like they've got the support of their family and other supporting groups to help them through difficult times. They have perseverance, they had patience and determination, and they wanted to succeed. They had a goal and they really moved forward to achieve that goal. That's a student I'd like to have in my lab or in my program. So you can see how that is different from, gee, I just love the area of biology, or I love the area of textiles. In the next example, we're not writing the mystery novel, so I don't expect that our first sentence is going to capture and captivate all of us and make us want to read further, but you do want to think about how you can begin the paragraph to just encourage the reader to go on. And I'm going to focus on the bottom part, just the first sentence of that bottom paragraph. The opportunity to one day change the living standard of thousands of people suffering from chronic joint deterioration fuels my desire to conduct research in the biomedical field. Okay, so they're really showing me where they want to go and what they want to focus on. And then they go on to talk about their undergraduate research projects, have really reinforced their decision and given them some background so that they can continue to work on and pursue a PhD in the biomedical engineering field. And then they talk about their goals, where they're going afterwards, which is really key. Such a degree will enable me to participate in the development of new technology and to become a role model to first-generation minorities. So it talks about where they want to see, where they want to go with this degree, and ultimately what they want to accomplish. In the next example, you really want to state what you have to offer, and really, as they're reading all these different statement of purpose, they want to read yours and really see, wow, this statement makes this student stand out. What makes you different? How do your interests match with the faculty's research or the faculty's interests? Or let's say, assume you're just going to do a master's program and nothing, I mean, that was where I started. Okay, let's figure out that I'm in a program that doesn't do research. I want to make sure that I understand what that program is going to offer so that I can make sure that my interests and what I want to accomplish with that master's degree will help me write this statement. So how do my interests match with the program's goals and what they can offer? If you know a faculty member and you've reached out to them, you can mention them by name. But again, I cautioned you to make sure that the faculty member is still at the department in the institution. That is so important. In the next example, it really talks about, if you're really focused on, some of you are maybe focused on a PhD, and so you want to think about so being open to others and being open to, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, to constructive feedback so that you can be open to learn. In this example, the person writes that they want to pursue that PhD in biomedical engineering, and they know that they want to focus with a medical emphasis in medical devices. So here again, they've done some research, in the program to know that there's a good emphasis in medical devices. They are also very interested, as they write, to initiate a patient-centered design focus, okay? So that's where I want to go with this degree. I want to focus on the patient. I want to focus on design and medical devices, right? They know that in the field of medical device design and development, that if they focus on this, their long-term goals is that they want to design medical devices with the patient in mind. They want to develop customized medical products for a wide variety of users and patients with special needs in clinics in developing countries or average everyday users. So you see where they want to focus, you see how they want to focus, being patient-centered, and what they want to do with this degree ultimately, where they go. Now keep in mind that along the way, they may change their mind that they don't want to do clinics in developing countries, but they may focus on the average everyday users. All right, we want to talk about, some of you may have had experience with different methodologies through some of the coursework you've taken, some of the class projects, and I know some of my students, we would do some qualitative research, we might do semi-structured interviews. I would send them out, or I'd get them to go out and collect some field notes. So if you've had those kinds of experiences, you can write about those, even if, let's say, the field that you're going to pursue in your master's or PhD will take even more advanced methodologies into consideration. You can talk about that you've had experiences detailing field notes or collecting and coding a variety of student work samples, or conducting in-depth semi-structured interviews with students, or with a good example my students would be with industry people and do case interviews, semi-structured interviews, and then write case studies from that. So you can talk about your experience and your understanding of methodologies, either from the class or from some research that you've done. Okay. So final considerations for your statement of purpose is that you want to be personal, but not too personal. So they don't want to read your full life story, but they want to see how your focus and your interest in where you want to go with this degree is going to match what the program can offer. So you can discuss relevant volunteer or employment experiences or academic experiences, show your preparation for some research if you have that. And then this next bullet is so important. Be respectful and coachable. And I know you all are, but I have dealt with students who were not coachable. They just thought they knew everything. And many times I had to go in and sit in meetings and help the student understand that they need to be open, that the professor really does know and have a little more experience. The professor is learning as well as the student through this process. So you want to identify your strengths, don't pretend to be the expert, show your willingness to be taught and to learn from the faculty and from others. That's so important, because if you are open to receiving feedback from your peers and from the faculty, you're going to learn even more. And even as a faculty member, I am open to learning from my students and from my peers. It makes all the difference. And definitely, if you use a source, please cite it, don't plagiarize. And then in the next slide, we talk about another aspect, which you've seen in some of the examples, is how will you utilize your degree? And so you can talk a little bit about it. Again, nobody's going to hold you to that forever, but you've got to be thinking about, why am I doing this? Where do I want to go? What do I hope to achieve? And so you want to really help the faculty see that. Is it going to be as a business consultant or research and development, or, work for a nonprofit, and here are the skills that I can do. And then finally, on the next slide, we talk about, do not be sloppy. Have someone proofread, because when they start seeing mistakes that are just, we all have spell check. We all have grammar check. Use it, and that's why I said, read it out loud and have someone proofread it, because a lot of times you'll read it over and over again and you'll miss it. Someone will read it for the first time and go, oh, there's a misspelled word, or you need a comma here or a semicolon there. They can help with that. Through the Writing Center might be helpful. So make sure that your statement of purpose is the best piece of work that you can put forward. And keep in mind, there's a lot of AI and ChatGPT. The faculty are looking for your work and your critical thinking in this process. Terry.
So we're
Okay.
going to move on to the interview. I know we've covered a lot of territory, but we're getting pretty close to the end. And this is another very important critical element of the process of getting admitted. One thing that is clear is that faculty are highly motivated to get to know you as best they can, at least at the front end of things. And particularly if one is applying to a PhD program, the investment that has to be made is enormous. So here's a quote: if I'm going to spend over $160,000 and the next 5 or 6 years with this person, you can be sure that I'm going to want to interview this person. And that is really clear, especially if they are using not only university resources, but resources from grants and others that they have actually acquired in the process. So faculty are clearly motivated. And another quote: I want to know what's motivating them to pursue the field that they're applying for, and something about their persistence, their grit, their determination to better understand their potential to be successful in our program. And I know Maureen and I have mentioned several times certain key terms: motivation, persistence, determination, grit. These are things that have to jump out at the reviewer when they're reading your personal statement, your statement of purpose. But we also want to see that coming out from the letters that are being written on your behalf. How have you generated that enthusiasm so that the faculty communicates that and is consistent with what you're saying about yourself? So the interview is really a very important part of the process. And the purpose, of course, is first of all to better understand you, to recruit you, to offer admissions, and to facilitate you learning about them. So this is going to be a two-way street. And you have to be very clear that it's not just them interviewing you, but you also want to size them up to make sure that this is the kind of environment that you want to be in and the kind of people that you want to be studying and working alongside with. So the first rule is that you interview the faculty and the students. And of course, the second rule is you're being interviewed by the faculty and the students. Again, this is a two-way street. So you want to treat it as that. A very important rule is that you're always at the interview. When you're interviewing in person, remember others are always assessing you. And so you want to be on for the purpose of the interview. So the formal interview may be over, but you may run into these individuals in the hallway, on campus. And so you can't let your guard down, but you want to be natural. You want to be genuine. And so think about that when you're in the process of talking to people related to the admissions process. You want to relax and you want to tell the truth and be yourself. This is really key because faculty are going to compare notes. They're going to be talking about the interview they had with you and the interview that you had with them. And you want to make sure that you're consistent in terms of the information that you're providing. And that's where the truthfulness comes in. So you don't want to say something that you really didn't mean to say, but it sounded good, you know? So you want to make sure that you're being genuine and you're also being sincere, that you're being yourself. Who are the interviewers? Well, certainly faculty from a particular lab that you're interested in joining are going to be key. It may be faculty in the graduate program. I know in my field in psychology, I'm a behavior neuroscientist, so the people in the graduate program program that our individuals would interview would not be all the faculty in the department, but those within the behavior neuroscience area and the neuroscience program in general. You might be interviewing with current graduate students, possibly first-year students or advanced students, and actually tap into them because they are a wonderful resource of what the environment is like. So when you're talking to graduate students, ask them about their experience, ask them how satisfied they are with the program, ask them about mentorship and whether they're receiving the kind of guidance that they were expecting to receive when they got into the program. So use it as a resource as well as a way to kind of reflect on yourself. There may be university or departmental directors or administrators that are part of the process. This might be the case in terms of resources. Maybe there is a person in the graduate school that is responsible for for fellowships and financial aid that you may get to meet. So they may be interested in resources that you may or may not have to support you. And in other cases, some departments and programs actually elicit help from their alumni. And this is often key if there's an industrial component to it, where maybe there are opportunities, internships outside of the department that are tied into alumni that are working within that particular field. I'm thinking marine with material sciences and the fact that the outside members are often very important. And I'm thinking of the pharmaceutical and biomedical sciences, where a lot of them go into big pharma and they have connections, alumni there that they bring to campus to meet the students. So think about who it is that's going to be interviewed. Before you interview, of course, familiarize yourself with the department, the school, and the community. You really want to get to know the department better than the faculty do, because the faculty half the time don't know as much about the department as you think they do. But you want to be on your game. You want to be on spot. So make sure that you know as much as you can about it. Make a list of questions that you might have, and maybe ask for a list of individuals that you're going to be meeting. That they may provide that to you, but they may not. So you may want to ask. Think about your general overall appearance. And this certainly is the case if you're doing in-person interviews, but even if you're doing virtual interviews, think about your appearance and what's appropriate. So this appropriate wear. And I realize with virtual interviews these days, it's probably more of the waist up than the waist down. But if you're think about how you want to present yourself. And then you want to email any contact from the program that you may want to solicit some information from. You also want to review your application packet, because it may be a little different from one department to another. And maybe certain departments or programs ask for certain information and others did not. So familiarize yourself with what it is you sent to that institution, because again, they're going to be reviewing that, and they may bring up something that you had mentioned that you had forgotten you had mentioned. So make sure that you're up to speed on that. So during the interview, what's going to happen? Well, as our other colleague, John Augusto, says, asking questions show that you understand that the interview is mutual. Again, as I mentioned, it's a two-way street. So ask to see the facilities, the lab, the classrooms, the campus, and even possibly the community if you're there for a period of time. You want to sit up and smile and speak clearly. Remember, it's a conversation with a purpose, so be ready to participate. And what I would say is that you want to be kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You want to show that you're really genuinely interested, that you're inquisitive about not the environment, but the resources and the faculty. So you want to show that you really do want to get to know the department better, so that if they do offer you admission, that you're ready to go. So you want to ask a lot of questions. Again, it may be in person or virtual or hybrid, but the elements of the interview are always going to be pretty much the same. And I realize that some people are more shy than others are, and I think faculty in general appreciate the fact that there are individual differences, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time for people to warm up. And then there are cultural differences in personal interactions. And I know when I was attending a special program for Native Americans at the University of Arizona, it was a summer program, and I was a visiting faculty in this program. There was this one young female Native American, and she was so quiet, and she was in mathematics. It took me like 3 days to really get to know her, and it turned out she was really gregarious and fun. But there's a thing about how they relate to elders, to older people. And so sometimes an interview doesn't give you enough time to bring out your true personality, but do the best you can to feel loose and comfortable and inquisitive. And I think that that's about the best that you can do. So after the interview, write thank you messages for those individuals that spent time with you. If possible, ask for some feedback. Maybe they might have some recommendations that they might want to offer you, and then follow up with any additional information that's requested during the interview. Make sure that you provide them with everything that they want to know. All right. So we'll move on to financial considerations, and Maureen.
All right, financial considerations are very important. And so the sources of funding could be fellowships or scholarships. They could be funded at the university level, department level, or even external. And we jump over to the right side of that slide. There's money available from the National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health, Ford Foundation, different professional societies where you can write for funding as grants to support you. And so that's something you may want to, especially if you're in the STEM areas, you may want to talk with your faculty members now about an NSF fellowship. Keep in mind that the amount of fellowship or scholarship, whether it's coming from the university or department or external, the amount, what is the amount of that fellowship? What's the length of time? Sometimes scholarships are available for 1 year, or the assistantship or the fellowship is available for 5 years. What are the conditions of the award? Do I need to work for that? Or do I need to write a report or give an update to the funding agency? And so keep in mind that the application process for the Federal Society and private funds will vary, and consider student loans at the last resort. They have to be repaid, but if you are getting a fellowship or a teaching or research assistantship, then you definitely want to ask some additional questions. And on the next slide, you're going to want to know how much is it per academic year? Is it a 9-month stipend or is it 12 months? What am I doing over the summer if it's 9 months? What will happen with my tuition? Will they pay the tuition? Is there money in that, whether external funding or whether it's internal from the university? Will they reduce that tuition to a small amount like $1,000 versus maybe 6, 7, 10,000, whatever the amount may be? Is health insurance? These are all important things to ask when these awards are being made. Is there money? This is a good question to ask in the department. If you're doing research and you're going to be writing a paper with your professor, is there money in the department to support you to attend a conference, to travel money? Housing allowance usually is not available except in very high dollar expensive cities. I know like some private institutions in New York City will give a housing allowance, but it's something to ask for. So you need to understand what the specific support is available and important decisions. Sometimes scholarships aren't available to first-year students, but they are for second year. So you need to know that and ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Explore your options. When you're choosing between 2 institutions, you want to think about the cost of living, and you can do that online. Say, I'm going to get X number of dollars per year as a stipend. Okay, I'm looking at University of Georgia versus University in California. What are the and let's say you're not living close to home, so you've got to think about where you're going to be living and the cost of living expenses, and you can do that. And so that's really important. Okay, on the next slide, you want to get the award in writing. Don't listen to, hey, we're gonna give you a fellow, that's nice. I really want that fellowship, but I need it in writing. And you also need to plan for the unexpected. And as I always tell my students, faculty would love to have that grant money August 1st, but different awards come in and money comes in available at different times. And so that's things that you need to ask. So to wrap it up, let's close the deal, Carlos.
So you've gotten to the point, you've done all that work, you've gotten your applications, and now suddenly you're getting some offers. People, you're being admitted, they want to admit you, and you are excited about that. And hopefully it's more than just one. And hopefully it's at places that you want to be at. And now you got to start identifying your priorities. So you got to be thinking about a whole array of different things. The academic setting, the kind of mentorship that you possibly will be receiving, both academic and life mentoring. What are the resources on campus? Um, the location may be a key factor for some individuals, particularly if they don't want to move too far away from home. But location is probably less critical than the environment in which you will find yourself in, the people that you're surrounded with. When you're looking at the department or the institution, even the city, can you see yourself being happy in that particular environment? In most cases, the environment has to do with the support systems you have. And so thinking about social support networks, are the cohort of individuals you're coming in with, and hopefully you've met some of them, people that you want to engage with, that you want to develop study groups with? What about the more advanced students? And then, of course, there's a notion of opportunities that are provided by the institution, teaching opportunities, research opportunities, opportunities to collaborate. I know that in Georgia, Los Angeles, other places, there are other surrounding institutions, and oftentimes faculty collaborate with individuals outside of their home institutions, and students oftentimes engage in collaborative research efforts. And so those things are really critical. Maureen had mentioned funding yourself, financial aspects of it. Think about the cost of living. You may have one institution that's offering you admission that is in a very expensive location. Maybe it's New York, maybe it's Atlanta, maybe it's Los Angeles, whereas another institution is in the more suburban area and the cost of living is really quite different. So when you think about the funding packages that they may be offering you, put into the equation the cost of living and how far you can stretch a dollar. Because you may be getting a lot, but that dollar may not go very far in certain locations. So there's a lot of things that you're going to be thinking about. So in your process of closing the deal, again, this involves, just like an interview, it involves two parties. The department's making you an offer, and you are making the decision either to accept or decline the offer. The offer times may vary, but in other cases, there are strict limits in terms of when they want you to respond, because they want to go ahead and set up the class that they're going to be with. So be prepared to make a decision, and make a decision at within a fairly reasonable period of time. In most cases, most institutions abide by April 15th deadline, certainly for funding promises that are made along the way. But before you make a decision, make sure you have the letter of acceptance or admission to the program. Make sure that you have a letter outlining the financial support that they're going to be offering you. And this again may be in the terms of fellowships, or maybe teaching assistantships, or other kinds of resources. Maybe it's money from a grant that the faculty has that you're joining. You think about, again, if you haven't done so already, making an in-person campus visit if you can. Think about the costs and the benefits. Again, review your own priorities in terms of location, department, people you're going to be working with, and talk to at least a couple of other people about your decision. Talk to a faculty mentor that may know more about the program. Talk to a friend about your decision. So get some feedback, just like when you're writing things and having other people reflect on it. Have people reflect on your decision, because this is a big decision you're going to be making. Finally, you're closing the deal, so you're going to communicate your acceptance of their offer of admission, either by email, typically, mention any financial assistance that they're offering you, and then thank the faculty and thank the staff for all their time and efforts that they put into recruiting you and getting you into the program, and then start thinking about the process of the move, the physical move, the emotional move. Those are really going to be key, because I know sometimes you're leaving behind friends, family, and others that are part of the process, and making that adjustment and leaping into a whole other domain, another place to be. So after you've closed the deal, if you've been admitted to other programs, email those other programs and thank them for their offer. After all, you don't want to burn down any bridges. You may decide you're unhappy with the program that you were admitted to, and you may want to transfer. So, and they may be excited. They were disappointed that you didn't accept their offer. So keep that door open. Down the road, there may be future jobs that come up. And so they may remember that you were a great application, and they tracked your trajectory, and that you're doing just great, and they may be possibly your future colleagues. So again, make sure that you leave them with a good impression of you and the wonderful person that you are. So that concludes our formal presentation. We have time for questions, but before we do, I'm going to pass the next slide over to Julie, that wants to give you some important information about opportunities for the GRE General Test.
Great. Thanks everybody who stayed on till the end. I just wanted to share a special promotional offer for any of you who are taking the GRE test in the near future. In order to save you some money on the registration costs, we have a special promo code that you can use from now and up until April 7th. And that will save you $30 on GRE registration. So you can see the promo code on the screen here. We also have some products to help you prepare for the test. We have a 25% off on our GRE Mentor. That's an online course. And as Dr. Grijalva said earlier in his presentation, we also have tons of free information about the GRE and free test prep. So if the GRE is part of your application process, be sure to visit the GRE website to learn all about those free materials, as well as our fee reduction program. And now we're happy to answer any questions. I didn't see anything in the chat, but we can give it a moment in case anybody thinks of something they wanted to ask our experts. And Carmel, I don't know if you got any questions that came to you privately or anything like that.
No questions to me. I will say we are recording the session, as you guys know. And if you would like to receive this recording, please reach out to aap@ucf.edu with the workshop name and the date. And we will get that to you guys as soon as possible. And I see that there's some questions in the chat, so we'll get to that.
Okay, I do see something that popped up. So the question is, what would be considered a good GPA for competitive programs?
Well, I'm going to just jump in and say, Maureen and I have been really pitching holistic admissions, meaning that no one single thing should be the reason why one does or does not get admitted to a program. So, of course, you want to meet the minimum requirements of the institution or department, which is usually a 3.0 or something. So something within that range and above is going to be important, but the other aspects of your application really should tell the story.
So let's assume that you're 2.8, 2.9. Don't be afraid to apply to the graduate school, because a lot of times what faculty will do is look at your transcript, and maybe you had a rough year or two in the beginning and then found your major and you took off and you did really well. They're going to look at those foundational courses. So all of that is considered. And so, as Carlos said, a holistic approach, they're looking at everything, not just the GPA or just institution from which you earned your degree. They want to look at the whole package.
Now, the other thing kind of tied into a caveat here is that you may be doing great in your major courses, and maybe you didn't do so hot in the other courses that are not necessarily that pertinent to your major. That's where you want to talk about that in your personal statement. You want to let them know why there are these kind of missing pieces of the puzzle in terms of why you don't have a better GPA than you do. But Marina's right. You're going to be looking at that as a starting point, and then they're going to look at the transcript to see what story the transcript tells.
Don't see any other questions. I think we can wrap it up. Thank you again, Carmel, and your colleagues for having us here today.
Absolutely. And thank you guys, of course, as always, for presenting and giving us all that good information, especially to our students who are preparing for graduate school. I know we have a couple of summer graduates, so hopefully you're thinking about, maybe in the fall, but we'll see. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording.